Communitas is the group equivalent of the hero's journey. I will admit that I have been grumpy since the presidential election. Out of sorts. Angry. Disenchanted. I'm angry that so many Americans have no problem, it seems, with dehumanizing others, various bigotries and hatreds, and are uninformed, ignorant, and gullible to such an extent. That makes me scared. Not only for everyone I know and everyone I love and everyone else who is LGBTQ, a person of color, a refugee, an immigrant, a Muslim, a Jew, poor, homeless, sick, the list could probably be very long. And I'm also scared for me. I have a number of health conditions that require medication all the time. I have a brother who's a little younger and in a lot worse health than I am. I have a mom who's 89, and although she has no major health issues, she has a multitude of minor ones, including mobility. If the Affordable Care Act goes away, I'm terrified for all three of us. If people are allowed to bring back pre-existing conditions as part of a healthcare system. So I'm scared for me, too. And I realized that what's really bothering me, that what's really kind of underneath it all about how out of sorts I am, is that I can't just go around living my life like I did before. I've got to worry about a bunch of other stuff now. The current political situation has brought into very precise and acute focus just how privileged a life I have been living. I've never really had much to think about in my life about having a job, a place to live, food, health care. I've never had to worry much about being arrested, harassed, abused, or killed just for who I am, who my friends are, what my opinion on something is. And it's not just a privilege of my social location as a white cis hetero male person. It's also my historical and geographic location and the privilege that goes along with that that's really annoying me too. Although the benefits have not been shared by everyone, and certainly not everyone equally, I have lived my life in a more or less stable government, in a more or less stable economy, in a more or less stable environmental climate. Not anymore, not anymore, not anymore. That ticks me off. But being ticked off isn't going to do much for my situation, except inspire me to get on with it. I also realize, however, that throughout human history, the marginalized, the oppressed, the persecuted, the lost, the least, and the left out peoples among humanity have found ways to survive and thrive. And those examples give me a lot of hope and courage and ideas. People not part of mainstream dominant privileged culture have always had to struggle to survive. Some things that have defined these struggles historically are fighting for fairness, equity, equality, and justice. Also, leaning on spirituality, both religious and of the human spirit, and upholding one another and creating community among themselves. And then I realized these are the three pillars of our mission here: to practice loving community, encourage spiritual growth, and advocate for justice. And doing these things in times of struggle and adversity leads to a special type of community called communitas. Communitas is a concept developed in anthropology originally to describe the group experience of coming of age, of adolescence. Groups of young boys or girls and people would go with adults and learn how to be adults in their community, and it would involve ordeals and tests and learning various things, improving your skills and all that stuff. And in this experience, the people involved would grow bonded to each other through the experience of liminality and in-betweenness and risk and adventure and engaging a common ordeal together. Church mission consultant Alan Hirsch says it like this: Communitas is a community formed, and I would add also, or transformed, in the face of an ordeal, a challenge, a task, or a mission that requires each person to find each other in new and significant ways in order to get the job done. Friends become comrades. Team members become true team players. And they rely on and interact with each other in new and various ways. And a fascinating aspect of communitas is you cannot set out to intentionally create it other than agreeing to go on the quest or the journey or the mission together. Communitas is generated by the act of engaging a risky journey, a willingness to experience the transforming quality of inhabiting liminal space together as the group figures out their quest and then gets to work on fleshing out the mission they've discovered. And if this seems esoteric, I would have you think that you and all of us are probably very familiar with a lot of examples of communitas from history and stories and films and popular culture. The Israelites on their exodus from Egypt and wandering in the desert was a group engaging communitas on a quest together. The American revolutionaries did that. The characters who made up the Fellowship of the Ring did that. In fact, so did Thorin Oakenshield's company in The Hobbit. The characters involved in the Star Wars saga did this. Dorothy and her friends on the Yellow Brick Road formed a communitas. The crew of the various incarnations of the Starship Enterprise did this. Kermit and Fozzie Bear and all the Muppets did this in the Muppet movie. They formed a communitas, thrown together on a quest and a mission. The students in detention on Saturday in the Breakfast Club did this. The characters who hang around with Scooby-Doo solving mysteries do this. The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants did this. The Yaya Sisterhood did this. I can go on. Communitas is the group equivalent of the hero's journey. And everyone is a hero and has that type of journey, and every group does too if they want to engage it. These people are thrown together, or these Muppets or elves or dwarfs are all thrown together by circumstance, not often by choice. And what creates the special community called communitas between and among them is that shared adventure, the trials and tribulations they have to figure out and survive, the stuff they experience and navigate together, and the goal they're trying to reach together. And it's never easy. In fact, when it starts out, it can be so daunting you may want to give up. In the Fellowship of the Ring, when the 4 hobbits and the 2 men and the wizard and the elf and the dwarf, they all get together, they don't even like each other. The dwarf and the elf are always bickering. One of the men is trying to figure out how to be very valiant and noble and dignified, and the other man is trying to figure out how to steal the ring and, do his own thing. And it's kind of a mess at the beginning. But by the end, they figured out that they were on this mission together. And they grew bonded to each other in ways beyond their ability to describe in words. They said, these are adventures they put into song and telling tales. And that's usually what it is with Communitas. But it doesn't seem like it while you're going through it. The gang of ragamuffins flying around in the Millennium Falcon, come on, 2 smugglers, a teenage boy, a monk, 2 robots, and a princess. They're always bickering with each other when it starts out, especially the 2 robots with each other. And the smuggler with the princess, and the smuggler with the teenager, and the teenager with the princess. And they get thrown together by necessity of a quest to accomplish something. And even the ones that were hired to be part of the Communitas become not hired hands, but part of the Communitas themselves, engaging in the quest for justice, for what's right, for freedom. A faith community committing itself to an important mission creates the environment for Communitas to develop. And when this congregation took in Sahitnu and Dahlia into sanctuary, you took a step, those of you who were here then, from community into Communitas, into a shared adventure that you didn't know what it was going to bring and didn't know if it would even be successful. And you figured it out as you went along. And you did it. Dorothy had no guarantee of success, although when she finds out all she had to do is click her heels together a couple times, she was kind of ticked off, and I don't blame her. All the members of Frodo's band, that Fellowship of the Ring, they all thought they were on a doomed fool's errand. None of them expected to live or come back from it. And they did. The crew in Star Trek signs on with Starfleet to go where no one's gone before. That doesn't have the ring of safety to it. Without being overdramatic, there is no guarantee that the weeks, months, and years ahead in this country are going to be really fun. But Communitas exists to discover what is needed, find ways to make it happen, and not only survive, but succeed in the quest we're on together. Community, as comforting as it is, doesn't have the power of Communitas. Community, by its nature, is a tool that develops within a Communitas and helps it to remember joy and have fun and enjoy each other's company. And the Communitas is the heavier stuff of figuring out what's our work, what's our mission, how do we got to get this done. Communitas is a community formed in the middle of a risky adventure, usually that life has forced upon us. Forgive me for doing Tolkien again, but I have to. As Thorin Oakenshield, the dwarf, lies dying after the Battle of Five Armies, in The Hobbit, he says to Bilbo, who's a hobbit, a creature of very mild manners and loves to eat and drink and stay home. He says, "There is more in you of good than you know, child of the kindly West. Some courage and some wisdom blended in measure. If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world." Wouldn't it? We use our community we formed in the service of our communitas, our quest. It is really easy to see the dark side of human nature, given that the dark side of human nature is literally going to be inaugurated president tomorrow. It's very easy to see. In 1954, William Golding, a school teacher from England who observed firsthand how cruel boys could be to each other when left unsupervised, wrote a novel about English schoolboys marooned on a deserted island, Lord of the Flies. And absent authority and adults and the rules of society, they created a cruel, hierarchical, power-based, violent community for themselves. A deep dive into the darker side of being human. A couple years ago, Dutch historian and writer Rutger Bregman wanted to see if there were any real-life examples of Lord of the Flies and what happened in that group, if there were. And he found one. He wrote about it in an essay in The Guardian a few years ago called The Real Lord of the Flies, What Happened When 6 Boys Were Shipwrecked for 15 Months. In 1965, 6 boys ranging age from 13 to 16, who were all students at a Catholic boarding school in Tonga in the South Pacific, stole a fishing boat with a sack of bananas, a sack of coconuts, and a gas burner, and tried to get away from the school and sail to Fiji. Not terribly well thought out, this trip. They fell asleep and woke up to waves crashing over the boat, breaking the sail and everything in the middle of the night. After surviving on cupfuls, handfuls of rainwater for 8 days, they ended up on an island called Ata, a tiny little piece of rock at the extreme end of the Tongan archipelago, and survived there together for 15 months before being rescued by an Australian ship passing by. One of them fell off a cliff and broke his leg. The other set it and did all his share of the work for him. They worked in pairs, kept a fire going round the clock, scavenged for food, set up and grew a makeshift garden, lucked out finding feral chickens left behind when 100 years before the island was given up as uninhabitable. One boy fashioned a guitar from a scrap of driftwood and pieces of wire they found around where they found the chickens. Every night around the fire, they offered prayers and sang songs together. When they returned, the guy they stole the boat from was really angry, so the captain who found them helped them sell the rights to their story to Australian TV to pay the guy for his boat. It's Communitas. It doesn't have to be Lord of the Flies. We can choose to do it the other way. We have it in us for whatever we're facing to live into it out of the best of our nature, not the worst. And I think the way I can get myself out of a post-election funk, when all I think about is how badly America is messed up, I start to think of the days ahead as a fight, as a quest, as an important adventure that must be successful. Going into the days ahead by myself terrifies me. But it does not frighten me much to think of the days ahead as an errand of grace with others in community, in a communitas. And I believe the journey ahead of us is one of communitas, organizing to uphold democracy and human rights and compassion and kindness and love. And I feel in the days ahead we will be part of a quest born of necessity that all of us would probably rather not have to go on. But here we are, together. And we as a congregation are not alone. And neither am I. I am not just me. I am we. And so are you. Check out my website and blog at tonylorenzen.com for even more resources that will open your mind, touch your heart, and inspire your spirit.